Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button. We are on our way to 5,000 subscribers, but we can't do it without you. The playoffs, super boring this year. Both of them were big-time blowouts. Not even close. Pretty much over by halftime. First was the Cotton Bowl North Forest Cincinnati against Alabama. At halftime, Alabama had a 17-3 lead. We all knew that was over by then. Final score was 27-6. Desmond Ridder was 17 for 32, 144 yards. Terrible night. Bryce Young didn't have a great night. He was 17 for 28, 181 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. That's not amazing, but I guess it's efficient. It was the run game that helped Alabama just bully Cincinnati. Brian Robinson Jr., 26 carries for 209 yards. That's incredible. Alabama had a total of 482 offensive yards, and Cincinnati just 218 offensive yards. But no, don't give me that argument that Cincinnati doesn't belong in the playoffs, because if you give me that argument, then you'd have to say that Michigan doesn't belong in the playoffs either. Why? Because they got bullied by Georgia. Final score, 34-11. By halftime, 27-3. That game was over by halftime. Quarterback Stetson Bennett for Georgia, 20 for 30, 313 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So I was hyped about the playoffs this year, but it turned out to be a bummer. Big time bummer. It was just SEC teams bullying whoever showed up. And now we get Alabama versus Georgia, part 2. The rematch of the SEC championship. And a lot of people are saying, you need to be quiet about that mental hurdle by Alabama. Well, it's a real thing. Look at Alabama during the regular season, then all of a sudden in the SEC championship, Georgia gets humiliated by Alabama. And, you know, Alabama did physically dominate Cincinnati. I'm not arguing that at all. But the SEC championship is what I keep going by. That did not make any sense. And what happened? Georgia became the team that we saw in the regular season in the playoffs. So there's this one game where Alabama dominates Georgia that just doesn't make sense. And here we are, another rematch, SEC. We remember way back when between LSU and Alabama, that was boring. I have a feeling this one has the potential of being boring as well, that being Georgia getting their revenge and being the Georgia of the regular season and not the Georgia of the SEC championship, pounding Alabama. I hope I'm wrong. I want it to be a good game. We look at the 4 common opponents that these 2 teams had. First one, Arkansas. Georgia obliterated 37-0. Alabama had issues, barely beat them 42-35. In Auburn, Georgia had no issues with them either, 34-10. Alabama survived them, 24-22. Florida, Georgia didn't have any issues with Florida either, 34-7. Alabama barely beat them, 31-29. And finally, Tennessee. The final score for Alabama was 52-25, but we all know that that was a one-possession game up until the 4th quarter. Excuse me, 52-24. But still, you get the point. Georgia didn't have any issues with Tennessee. It was 41-17. And then, of course, they struggled with Alabama in the SEC championship. I was wondering what I was looking, because Georgia looked lost. For the first time all year, Georgia looked lost. Then fast forward to the college football playoffs, and they're the Georgia of the regular season. And they whooped Michigan 34-11. So I'm confused about Georgia. Georgia doesn't make any sense. They dominated the regular season, but then they get thumped by Alabama, then they get to the playoffs, and they go back to the Georgia of the regular season. So hopefully we get the Georgia of the regular season, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Puts Alabama in their place, because all of a sudden, ever since the SEC championship, before then Alabama fans were kind of, being quiet because they saw that their team was struggling. They were winning, but they were struggling. So the noise was calming down. But ever since the SEC championship, the volume of the Alabama fans has risen again, and they're trying to annoy me on purpose, which is fine. I get it. I encourage trash talk. But please, Georgia, show up this time. Get over the Alabama hurdle. Get over the mental stuff. You're not playing the 18-time national champions of the past. Yes, you're playing Nick Saban, but this Alabama team isn't one of the historically elite Alabama teams. And you are historically elite. So do what you're supposed to do and finally put Alabama in their place for this year. Now, next year, I expect Alabama to be elite and crush everybody. But for this year, please do what you're supposed to do. Be the Georgia of the regular season and the Georgia of the playoffs. And do what you were supposed to do this year. Win the national championship. I thought about being done, but I'm not done with this video quite yet. In fact, I walked outside and just decided to start recording. The big thing for Georgia is you're going to have to stop both phases of the offense, the run and the pass. Because as we saw against Cincinnati, Alabama can run at will if you can't stop them. Now, if you stop the run, Bryce Young is more than capable of picking you apart. So Georgia needs to play fundamental, disciplined defense like they've been doing all year except for the Alabama game. So that's the big head scratcher when you watch the SEC Championship. They didn't play disciplined defense. And even the defensive players for Georgia said that Kirby, for whatever reason, decided to change the defensive scheme. Don't do that. Stick with what's been working, and you will beat Alabama. If you stick with what's been working, with what you've been doing all season long, you will beat Alabama. But if you try to get cute and change things around and try to specifically game plan for Alabama like you did in the SEC Championship, you will lose. You will lose. Georgia, play to your strengths. Don't turn the ball over, and don't try to get too cute. That's it. Now, Alabama is playing their best football all year. Not going to lie about that. This looks like a completely different Alabama team. I am giving them full credit for that. They humiliated Georgia, and they humiliated Cincinnati. But we saw in the regular season that Alabama is beatable. Alabama is beatable. So if Georgia plays like the Georgia in the regular season, they can beat Alabama. They can beat them pretty bad, actually. But if they get under the lights and get starstruck and that mental hurdle of, oh, this is Alabama, we haven't beaten them in such a long time. They have 18 national championships, Nick Saban, all-time greatest coach. You're going to lose. Stop overthinking it, Kirby. If you stop overthinking it, you'll give your team a chance. Otherwise, Nick Saban is going to eat Georgia alive again. So it's all on you, Coach. You got to get your guys in the game and look at Alabama as just another team on the road for your national championships. First one since 1980. So it has to be looked as, they have to be a bland brand. They're just in your way. You can't think of them Alabama. If you start overthinking Alabama, you'll go paralysis by analysis. And that's what happened in the SEC Championship. Paralysis by analysis. If you can avoid that, you have a shot. But if you start overthinking it, Alabama will be national champions in back-to-back years. And if that happens, next year's Alabama is going to be scary good. We could be looking at a three-peat. So this is the only roadblock to keep Alabama from having a three-peat. This game right here, the national championship. It's up to you, Georgia, to stop the three-peat. And what about Nick Saban saying maybe Alabama will get a little respect after this win against Cincinnati, blowout win? What are you talking about? Alabama is one of the most respected programs on the planet, maybe the most respected program on the planet. The problem is you were inconsistent in this season. It's not that we don't respect you. It's just that we saw you struggle through the regular season, and all of a sudden the SEC Championship, you're an amazing team this year. Look, last year I predicted Alabama to be elite, go undefeated, win the national championship. That's what happened. And next year I'm predicting Alabama to be scary good. Like better than what Georgia looked like this year in the regular season. So I'm not disrespecting Alabama. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense that Alabama struggled in the regular season. Then all of a sudden they were amazing in the SEC Championship, and they look like a completely different team now from the regular season. I'm not disrespecting Alabama. I'm just confused. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.